Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here. I am so excited to present you all my second seasonal winter forecast 2024-2025 here on the first day of October. Now, if you are new to the channel and you really like these updates, please consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and sharing this video with your family and friends on social media. So now, to start off this video, here's a look at the latest oceanic state right now across the central and eastern equatorial Pacific basin south of Hawaii. And right now with what we have going on is our current base state right now is in a weak La Nina in the last 30 days. You can see the sea surface temperature anomalies here on the top part of the screen, those blue anomalies indicating below average sea surface temperatures. So right now we are looking at a weak La Nina with it being right now about negative 0.61 Celsius in the last 15 to 30 days. But our last 90-day average right now is 0.38 Celsius, which is a cool neutral phase right now. Not really in a La Nina in a 3-month average, but it is close. And this is going to propagate and continue to intensify as we go into the deeper fall months. And the image below shows us our actual sea surface temperatures in that area, which is on average 26.22 Celsius. Now, what do the climate models have to tell us for the months of January through March, which is the heart of the winter season across the United States and across Canada and Alaska? So right now, we got our new climate model data in for today. And as we can see here, for the climate forecasting system, which is on the bottom left side of the screen, so it's right down here is where we're seeing that. And right now, it is still showing that we are going to have a lot of North Pacific blocking over Alaska as well as the Northeastern Pacific, with downstream troughing over the Canadian area, including for Hudson Bay and the Northeast. This usually brings down a lot of cold Canadian air out of higher latitudes and brings them down into mid and lower latitudes. So areas like, say, the Great Lakes and even the Midwest could have some really cool temperatures coming up for January through March with a weak subtropical jet due to the fact that we don't have that El Nino in place, because during an El Nino, the subtropical and polar jets are more amplified. We get an extension to the jet over much of the Pacific like we had last year, and that's why a lot of areas in higher latitudes were actually much warmer than they will be this winter. Now, on the CANCIPS model on the top right side, you can see it shows a lot more stronger North Pacific blocking over the over Alaska as well as the Bering Sea, with a more stronger correlation to that La Nina with that northwestern flow over the northern tier of the United States. So that's a look at the January, February, March timeframe on these two climate models. Now let's take a look at with what our temperature outlook will look like here on our CFS and CANCIPS, which is the Canadian version of the climate model. So when we look at these two images, you can see that they both show two different things. Our European model has not come in yet, so unfortunately we won't be able to show you that, but we will do with luck with what we have here. So on our CFS model for January through March, we can see above average temperatures are expected here on this particular model. Now, there is some warm biases with the CFS model, so keep that in mind that it is not going to look like this. I can bet you $50 right now that we're going to see much cooler temperatures across the northern tier of the United States and the Pacific Northwest, including for the Great Lakes, but definitely for the southern tier of the United States, such as Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, going to see some really warm temperatures likely. Not really super warm, but, above the climatological average. So instead of it, say, it's the average high in central Texas is, say, 55 degrees. It'll probably be more like 59 to 60 degrees on a monthly average there. Okay, and then, of course, showing up on the CANSIPS model, showing above average temperatures for the deep south. And again, that correlation with La Nina, that northwesterly flow, going to really usher in a lot of colder weather across the Midwest and the upper Midwest, including the northern tier of the United States and Canada. Boy, these anomalies in a 3-month mean is quite significant. We could see some all-time record low temperatures perhaps up here in southern Canada. Now, as far as our precipitation outlook goes for January, February, and March 2025 here, but again, including late December here of 2024, you can see clearly that the CFS is a little bit on the wet biased actually, but more likely than not that the Pacific Northwest is going to have a very stormy, wet, cold winter. So that means significant snowstorms, blizzards, some big time wind storms up here in northern Oregon and Washington. My friend Keith Evans lives up here, so boy, Keith, you're probably excited about what this winter has to bring. This includes also for Montana, northern Idaho, and Wyoming, likely to see wetter than normal conditions with more snowfall than likely, and then wetter than normal conditions over portions thereof, say St. Louis, Missouri, into Indiana, as well as southern portion thereof if you are in Illinois. And of course, the Great Lakes, you're going to have a big lake effect snow machine. Now, it's very different when we look at the CANSIPS model, really dry up across much of the Midwest and the Deep South. I don't think this is going to happen, and I do think we're going to have above average here and well above average up here in the Pacific Northwest. So keep that in mind. But it does look to be drier than normal across the Deep South and the southwestern United States, of course, because of that La Nina, very La Nina like this coming winter. So now, what does the Climate Prediction Center have to say for all about with what I'm predicting? Well, they are pretty much similar to what I'm about to show you. Below average chances of temperatures across the Pacific Northwest. So again, that cold La Nina look to the pattern. And then of course down here for the Deep South and the Eastern Seaboard and the Southeast, you're likely to have above average temperatures, especially down here in the Deep South like Florida. You're probably going to have a really mild to warm winter ahead for January, February, and March. Now, what about the precipitation outlook here? Definitely a lot different than what we had last winter. You can clearly see well below average chances here for precipitation for the Deep South. This is not a good situation at all. Even so, Florida has recently had a lot of rainfall due to Helene, and even for portions here of the Appalachians, it's probably going to end up being pretty dry this coming winter for Florida, for southern Georgia, the Carolinas, Texas, as well as New Mexico, the Four Corners. California has equal chances and also well above average precipitation likely for Indiana and also for the Great Lakes. So now, with that being said, here is a look at my temperature outlook for January, February, and March. And I hope you guys really like the graphics here. I add some bevelness to the text here, including nicer, more quality maps. So I'm really hoping you like this very, very much. All right. So I did not put the actual chances here, but all you need to know is if you are in the blue area, you have a greater than normal chance that you will have below average temperatures this coming winter. So a cold winter ahead for the Great Lakes, for the Pacific Northwest. If you're in portions of the Rockies, the Deep South, and the southwestern United States, and also for the southeastern United States, you're going to have a likelihood chance of seeing above average temperatures. That's again this letter A right here, San Antonio, Houston, New Orleans, Jacksonville, Miami. You're going to have a really mild to warm winter and a near average temperature like winter for New York, for Boston, Massachusetts, and for the extreme Northeast. Very La Nina like I said. Equal chances for California. But now you all are wondering, what about the precipitation forecast? So here's a look at that here for January, February, March 2024, 2025. That does include December here. I did not include it here on the actual official forecast, but it is there. So of the 4 months blended in mean, you can see for Chicago, Indianapolis, Detroit, likely above average with precipitation. Likely below average for the deep south, so a really dry, warm winter, unfortunately likely for Jacksonville, Florida, for Miami, for New Orleans. If you are in San Antonio, really wet pattern setting up for the Pacific Northwest, so that means more bigger snowstorms, more frequent snowstorms, and cold Arctic outbreaks coming from British Columbia, Canada. Now you all have been waiting for my overall winter forecast. This is the second version from my previous one, and this is a little different than the last one. I was more broad instead of just adding little details to the niche of the map. But either way you put it, you can see stormy conditions are expected. That's what my forecast is. Stormy out across Oregon, Washington, and portions of southern Idaho. Very wet for Northern California. Wet spells for Central California. But for Southern California, we're going to have a mild and dry winter likely. So there's that big gradient between Southern and Northern California. Warm and dry conditions for the Deep South. But there will be a severe weather zone setting up for portions of the Deep South, like Dixie Alley. Severe weather is likely this coming winter, and that's because of the very warm Gulf of Mexico waters, that warmer portion of the southerly flow moving up into this region of Tennessee. And once we get those cold Arctic outbreaks that meet up with that moist air, we could see some big time severe weather events shaping up here. Cold and wet conditions over the Carolinas, big snows for the eastern seaboard, big nor'easters for the northeast, big lake effect snows for Lake Ontario, Lake Michigan, as well as Lake Huron. Just keep that in mind. Lake Erie as well. Big time snow or lake effect snowstorms. We could see several feet of snow by the time the winter is over. Extreme Arctic shots likely for the extreme northern tier of the United States. Again, as I mentioned, that big Arctic air mass is going to set up by late December into January, but especially in January into March, we could have some of the coldest Arctic air mass shots probably on record. Arctic shots, snowstorms too for the Midwest, and cold conditions follow. Now, there's just more to that than my overall winter forecast. I have made an updated version of my 2024-2025 snow amount forecast, and this was initialized back in September 27th. So I hope you enjoy this portion of the video. I'm going to try to be a little detailed here, but we want to kind of move through this rather quickly because we don't want this video ending up being 30 minutes long for a lot of you that don't want to watch a 30-minute video. So here's a look at the snowfall forecast here. And at the end, I do include under a ½ inch of snow down here. You'll see that. Okay, so the first layer here is showing us where there could be areas of about a ½ inch to an inch of snow. So that includes pretty much all of the Midwest and the northern tier of the United States. So if you are in this gray shading, you could see up to an inch of snow or as low as a ½ inch. So now our teal blue colors indicate 1 to 2 inches of snowfall. So if you're in the teal blue color, you could see up to 1 to 2 inches. All right. Also pause the video if you wish to see these individual layers. Now the next layer is 2 to 4 inches, which covers a very big population. That includes for the Northeast, the upper Midwest, the Pacific Northwest, and the western half there, such as California. Now our next layer is 4 to 8 inches. So you can see again, a lot of area covered here, including for the Great Lakes. Our 8 to 12 inch mark is in the darkest blue area. So you can see many areas there, expecting about 8 to 12 inches of snow for this upcoming winter. Now again, the snowfall forecast does cover all the way from early December all the way through early April, folks. All right, so this is not just a January through March thing. This is all the way from December 1st through April 1st, April Fool's Day, okay? So 12 to 16 inches is expected across much of the northern tier, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast, with 16 to 24 inches expected here in more of that purple magenta color. So that's 2 feet of snow in some areas here on the map. But it only gets a lot more than this. 24 to 30 inches is expected across the northern tier. And again, a lot of areas that expecting that amount of snow. But it gets even more, up to maybe 2.5 feet of snowfall over Chicago, Detroit, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Boston, Minneapolis, Denver, as well as maybe east of Seattle. Some of the higher elevations there could see up to 36 inches. Now up to 42 inches is expected, so almost 3 feet of snowfall in some of these areas, including for the Intermountain West. This continues with up to 3 feet of snowfall for Chicago, for Detroit, for Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Boston, Minneapolis, Denver, and also again for the Sierra Mountains of California. But this is going to only get more, now up to 54 inches. So if you're in this kind of candy, hot pink, hot red color, showing up to 54 inches of snowfall. But it gets even more than that. Up to 60 inches of snowfall is expected. Now take note of that lake effect snow that I highlighted here across Lake Michigan. The downstream wind areas could see a lot more snow than say Detroit. Only Detroit may be up to about 3 to almost 4 feet of snow expected. Now, as we go, and we're just going to kind of skip, actually, we're going to look at here, 60 to 66 inches is expected across much of the Northeast, the northern tier, the Great Lakes, and also for, say, Montana. But look at this, up to 72 inches of snowfall, and I did a nice highlight relief map showing you all which areas could see the most. Buffalo, maybe up to 72 inches, but look at this, it gets even more. Up to 78 inches of snowfall expected for Buffalo. For areas like Kalamazoo, Michigan, could see a lot more snow. Northern Wisconsin, 78 inches of snow is expected there. And look at the Intermountain West, getting a lot more snow. But this continues. 84 inches of snow, or up to that amount over Buffalo. Again, more isolated at this point, not a widespread area. And this continues with up to 90 inches of snowfall for Buffalo, New York, for Watertown, New York. So more like the higher elevations and more of the lake effect snow prone areas going to see the most. And then up to 96 inches of snowfall. Look at this, Buffalo, Wild Wings, going to get a lot of snow there, as well as the Intermountain West of, say, Montana, the Idaho, as well as California. Denver could see quite a bit of snow there. And this continues up to 102 inches of snow for Buffalo. Man, this is getting a lot, pretty concerning when you get that much snow, but more to come. And then look at, I'm just going to kind of fast forward this, up to 126 inches, okay, for Watertown, for Buffalo, New York. 126 inches, folks. That is pretty concerning. And then up to 136 inches. So these small areas, I didn't do good here at circling this in, but for Buffalo and also for Watertown, could see locally, microscopically, hyperlocally, up to 136 inches of snow. And then this continues up to 150 inches of snow. Look at that small area there near Watertown, New York. Wow, 150 inches. But mainly for Montana, for northern Idaho, for the Cascades there of Washington, going to see up to 150 plus, and then up to 162 inches of snowfall, perhaps over some of the highest terrain. And look at this. This includes also for Watertown that could get microscopically, you can be a block away and it won't get that much. Very, very local there in Watertown, getting up to 162, but mainly for the higher elevations of Montana. And this continues through the last layer here, 162 inches. Possibly some isolated spots could get 200 plus inches. In fact, some extreme outcomes here on some of the climate models do indicate that some of the Cascades could get 500 plus inches of snow this winter. That is pretty substantial when you think about it, maybe even more than that. All right, and here's a look at the finished product here of the snow map. Now, one last thing here is for Dallas, for Atlanta, for Charlotte, you might see up to a half an inch of snow this coming winter. And again, that runs from December 1st through April the 1st. So maybe the second to last day of March, you might get a half an inch, or maybe the first couple of days of December, you may get a half an inch of snow. But there's not going to be a whole lot of snow down here this coming winter. I do not see that happening. More than anything, maybe more ice storms, sleet storms, that kind of deal, especially over portions of the Carolinas. But anyways, that is going to sum it up for today's detailed winter weather forecast here for 2024-2025. I sure hope you liked the video, you found this video very helpful. If you did, please subscribe for more weather updates, such as live streams on severe weather, winter storms, and hurricanes, winter weather updates, tropical weather updates, and much more on the channel. You do not want to miss any more weather content here. And you can only do that if you do subscribe, you hit the like button, and you share this you share this video with your family and friends on social media, and also ring the bell notification icon for latest updates. But that's going to do it with this winter weather forecast, folks. I'll be back with you more tomorrow.